With My Hero Academia Season 8 on the scene, the lovable Deku is back to smash villainy, and hopefully Shigaraki's face along with it. And as one of the most prominent superheroes in anime, we're going to see how Deku would do against the formidable monsters of One Punch Man. This will be One Punch Man Season 1 focused, but if this gets a lot of likes and you guys enjoy it, then we might just roll Deku along for a ride through Season 2's monsters and beyond. So hit that like button and watch the full video. For this scenario, we will be using the version of Deku within Season 8 who is said to have reached the overall power of a Prime All Might. Going by official handbooks and in-series claims should put Deku within this level, or perhaps even a tad beyond given his versatility. So that's what we will use for this video to at least keep some level of power understanding. There's a lot of debate as to where exactly the highest tier of characters like Deku of My Hero Academia scale to, but to keep it simple and on board with the general idea and area of where I feel is right for him going by feats and narrative interpretation, I'll go with combat speeds around the relativistic to faster than light category at best, and power residing at the multi-continental scale when pushed to his absolute limit. This means he's not throwing multi-continental jabs for fun out there, and so to reach that scale, he'll need to get right in the trenches to pull off those massive power moves. With that said, let's get to tiering. Casual indicates low difficulty. He's styling out there while death tapping these monsters and is shaking hands and kissing babies right after. Business casual means that while they have no real chance of beating Deku, they could probably hurt him to some degree if he's not careful, or they offer some measure of complication despite not being physically dangerous to him. Smash indicates that Deku is in full control of the fight, but will likely need to bust out one of his trademark smash moves to put the monster down for good, maybe even a few. Plus Ultra references back to Deku's scaling limit I mentioned earlier. To win this fight, he's needed to dig deep and pull out all the stops in order to reach the heights of One For All's power to make it through victorious in a high difficulty situation. Finally, send assistance. Deku gave it his best, but this encounter is simply too much for him alone, and he's going to need a certain bald hero to step in and save the day. What, you seriously think I'm gonna let a monster kill a kid? Never. Now, it's time to smash through this tier list with a smile. Kicking things off with Crablante, Deku's first order of business within One Punch Man would be an easy one. While crabs can only go side to side, it's nothing but down for the monster Crablante since Deku snaps him in all the attributes without much discussion needed. Harder, better, faster, stronger. Deku is going DEFCON 3 on all disaster level tiger monsters. Casual for Crablante. Super Custom Mark II is what happens when your gaming rotation consists of Gran Turismo, Forza, and Need for Speed. This monster was very inconsequential and never amounted to much, so we'll go ahead and park him in the casual tier for having no real mark on this series or any narrative info attached to him. And if you've ever had problems finding clothes in your size, imagine how this next guy feels. Beefcake was able to cause extreme damage to a city via shockwaves with one swing of his arm, so if you haven't noticed, getting hit by this guy isn't in anyone's best interests. However, despite this extreme amount of power, his actual blows do seem to have some kind of ceiling to them, since direct hits to Saitama and the surrounding area didn't surpass 100 meters in the downward direction. Given that Deku should be far faster than Beefcake while also possessing the amount of attack output required to defeat him, it's very reasonable to say that Deku can be responsible for the biggest chalk outline in history. How close this fight goes depends on your interpretation of Beefcake's overall power. On the lower side, it will be in the smash if you think Deku will need a few clean trademark smashes as he ramps up One For All to the right degree of power while mostly evading anything Beefcake can do, or it'll be in plus ultra if you think this process will push Deku to the very limit where it will require one of, if not his best punches to do the job. I personally feel Beefcake isn't fast enough or accurate enough to hit someone of Deku's combined size and speed, especially when he'll be using Smokescreen, Black Whip, and Gear Shift to make himself even harder to see and touch while delivering his attacks to Beefcake throughout. Honestly, I can make arguments for both, but I'm going to stick with plus ultra because I think the threat of his attacks landing are worthy of that tier. Either way, Deku takes it. Dr. Genesis' scientific portfolio is under review for this next section because the House of Evolution is under the microscope. Ground Dragon isn't doing much of anything to Deku, so he'll go on the ground floor of this tier list in casual. Kamakuri and Armored Gorilla should be within the same region of overall effectiveness given their selection and role for the mission to confront Saitama and Genos. Unlike Ground Dragon, they are a more direct force, with Armored Gorilla's cybernetic strength and Kamakuri's sharp limbs both likely to harm Deku if he were to allow them free reign with their attacks, which he would not. This puts them in business casual since, yes, they're far below him, but his flesh isn't invulnerable. Mosquito Girl could be overcome by Deku's incredible strength and speed, coupled with the shockwaves he'd cause to counter her mosquito swarms. The bigger question question for me is how her metamorphosis transformation would do. She's faster, stronger, and packs slashes that can quite literally tear buildings to shreds with the air of her attacks alone. I'm going to put her in Smash tier, since while Deku should be faster and stronger, her slicing attacks are no joke, so he'll need to keep his wits about him. Beast King shares in that building slicing category with the shockwaves from his claw attacks, and as the noted number 2 of the House of Evolution, added with what we saw from him as a demon level monster, we can say that Deku should be able to handle him, landing in the Smash category. Again, this means Deku would be in control, but it's going to take more than some light hits to keep a monster of this level down, so he'll need to throw one of his Smash series in there. This brings us to the man of the house, Carnage Kabuto. If you let this guy run free in My Hero Academia, you're near enough losing all of your heroes, because he is turning quirk users into red mist with his punches, especially in Carnage mode. Like I said in my video of Prime All Might against Carnage Kabuto, this is physical warfare which will push Deku to the limit. He's gonna need those biggest punches of his to survive this one. Considering it took Darkshine around 15 minutes to defeat Kabuto during his simulation, we can expect Deku to fall somewhere around the same region, given that in terms of overall physical capability, they're rather close. Darkshine's indestructible body is an advantage in his repertoire that Deku doesn't have, however, so Deku will be more prone to taking some heavy damage, which makes this fight very dangerous for him if he starts taking shots, although he does have additional tricks like Smokescreen and Gear Shift to supplement his physical power instead. This will be a grueling battle, and it will take a mighty effort from Deku to deal with Kabuto's brutal approach. Deku should hit harder at his peak between the two of them, which is what I think makes the difference here for a plus ultra tiering, and since I said All Might can do this, Deku at this level with extra quirks on hand should be able to as well, but again, this is highly dangerous and requires full respect from Deku. Alright, this next bunch are royally screwed. It's the various monster kings throughout season 1. Considering these were all said to essentially be around the same level by Murata or 1, can't remember which, but basically we can pretty much lump these all together. Deep Sea King, Subterranean King, Ancient King, and Sky King are all powerful beings who are more than capable of harming Deku if he were to just sit there and take it. But since he's not going to be doing that, Mr. One for All should be able to dispatch all of these foes with a strong punch or kick from one of his Smash Move series, and when you throw in his other quirks for good measure, it will make it pretty clear that he's got this section wrapped up nicely. I say these go in Smash and not business casual because despite them not being able to defeat him, they are generally pretty resilient foes who are happy to take a punch if we go by Deep Sea King, so Deku will need to hit them with something convincing to shut them up for good. I'm not saying he's going to need a punch which will extinguish the embers of One for All, I'm just saying a simple punch or kick will not put these guys down for long given their monstrous bodies, durability, and in the case of Deep Sea King, their regeneration. I've always said it feels weird to me that Ancient King is supposedly around the same level of power as the rest of them, given he's a freaking dinosaur-sized lump of scaly muscle, but who am I to say otherwise if the creators have made it clear? Konbu Infinity defeated 2 A-class heroes in season 1 and has Piercing Konbu, which should not be taken lightly if you're made of flesh. However, Deku has dealt with more dangerous foes with sharper projectiles such as Lady Nagant, so I think this won't be too much of an issue for him after that experience. Business casual, where this shouldn't be too taxing on him, but will need to ensure he doesn't get sliced and pierced while dealing with the situation. It's exclusively disaster level dragon from here though. Geryuganshoop is a monster who, like I said in my All Might version of this video, can often get overlooked since he went out in a pretty comical manner against Saitama. With that being said, he is one of Boros' generals for a reason, one of the strongest psychics in the universe, or so he says. It's still evident that he's capable of hurling objects at sublight speed and creating gravitational waves with the force of a black hole. Dragon level threats absolutely need to be taken seriously considering their capabilities indicate they're able to cause some real damage, while usually being incredibly hard to put away, as Deku would no doubt find out here. If I didn't see a way for Deku to overcome Geryuganshoop's gravity manipulation, I'd very likely give the victory to the alien. However, I think Danger Sense and Smokescreen offers Deku a very reasonable way to counteract it when used in conjunction with his speed and power, which will allow him to anticipate and evade that ability. With the power of his attacks being theoretically enough to harm more than a few dragon level monsters, Deku's strongest strikes should be able to break the defenses of Geryuganshoop as long as he utilizes his quirks to the fullest to overcome the psychic's offense. Because of this and the danger it poses, this will be a plus ultra matchup for me where Deku will need to stay clued in to his danger sense while using Smokescreen to provide both distractions and openings to smash this alien squid for good. Melzargard is a different problem. With the power to shrug off numerous S-class level attacks, regenerate from from practically anything unless his marbles are compromised, and dish out threatening strikes of his own which can cut, smash, and pierce at fatal degrees, this is not a monster to take lightly for Deku. It's worth noting that some people underestimate this monster based on his performance, but he was having to split his attention and offense between 4 S-class heroes, 2 of which are among the best of them, and he could have possibly killed Prisoner if not for Silverfang's deflection. The question comes down to whether or not Deku can figure out the system behind his regeneration while handling Melzargard's full attention alone. If he doesn't, then he is defeated by Melzargard after a long and drawn out fight where Deku succumbs to fatigue. However, Deku is very analytical and experienced in finding the weaknesses in an opponent when brute force doesn't cut it, so I think he'll spot one of those marbles during the regeneration process and figure out what he needs to do. Melzargard is incredibly dangerous and has frightening strength, speed, and longevity, but Deku has the power and intelligence to hold firm and grit his way through to the end, even if it takes everything to do it. Plus Ultra for Melzargard. Groribas is a funny one because we saw Saitama one-shot him with ease, but according to Geryuganshoop, he's the best warrior in Boros' army, which could possibly include Melzargard, so he is around that level, albeit with a focus for acidic attacks rather than regeneration and brute force, which obviously will kill Deku at dragon threat level if Vomited Fura Ugly's acid is anything to go by. By that narrative deduction, it'd be another plus ultra worthy test for Deku, the main challenge being to avoid that dragon threat level acid, but between Deku's physical capability mixed in with his set of quirks, I can see him dealing with this. Wrapping up the Dark Matter Thieves with the man himself, none other than Boros, the dominator of the universe. Naturally, you will already know that not only is Boros too much for the likes of Deku, but he is too much for the likes of My Hero Academia itself, with strikes that can launch people to the moon, heat which melts spaceship metal, and beams which can destroy planets. The speed of Boros is so fast that Deku wouldn't even have the opportunity to perceive it. It's not even clear if Deku would be able to get Boros out of his armor, since we know even in that state, Boros is still outrageously powerful and a threat to all of humanity while sealed. Yet it's clear that anything above is simply too much for our freckled hero. Thankfully, Saitama's bound to show up just in time to make sure young Deku doesn't get in over his head, putting Boros in the send assistance category where he rightfully belongs. Great job with this tier list, Deku. Sometimes you just have to let Caped Baldy step in. But before this ends, there's one more to go, and it's a monster many can't quite agree on in One Punch Man when it comes to how powerful he is. Vaccine Man. Usually thrown into a three-way conversation with Beefcake and Carnage Kabuto, where he scales to them usually goes one of 3 ways. Some people believe Kabuto is more powerful than Beefcake and Vaccine Man. Some people believe Beefcake is more powerful than the 2 of them. And some people know the correct answer is that Vaccine Man is the most powerful of the 3. Obviously, I'm teasing, so don't take that too seriously, since it is all speculation. I'm just having some fun with you. But I still do believe that he is the strongest of the 3, and I think it's reasonable to view him as the second strongest monster in all of Season 1 behind Boros. Some point out that Carnage Kabuto is the strongest monster seen so far regarding the 3 via a statement in the databook, yet that is very clearly insinuating in the context of the House of Evolution's experiments. For Beefcake, they say the state of his body after a Saitama punch proves his superiority, but that is simply artistic variation because it's boring for Murata to draw every Saitama one-punch kill the exact same way, and it's boring for us to see every Saitama one-punch kill presented the exact same way. You would only take their condition after a Saitama punch seriously if it has concrete narrative depth attached to it, and as the cherry on top, this line of thinking makes some weaker monsters seem stronger than some clearly higher level monsters, so it's easily debunked. Anyway, Vaccine Man was stated in a bonus chapter to have been perhaps the greatest monster who had appeared in history at that time. By this point, they'd have seen Elder Centipede fight Blast, which put some weight behind Vaccine Man. Granted, that wasn't a peak Elder Centipede as he becomes stronger a few years later when we see him again, but this narrator statement about Vaccine Man was also made before he showed his transformation state, which dramatically improves his power. So that's also something to think about when concerning that statement regarding those 2. Murata also joked long ago that because there's no way to measure Saitama's strength, the possibility can't be excluded that Vaccine Man is the strongest monster of the series, as one breaks the storytelling mode of introducing monsters that are subsequently stronger. Now, obviously this doesn't mean that is true, nor does anyone think he's stronger than Boros. But again, it's very interesting that Murata said this about Vaccine Man, but none of the other Saitama victims of Season 1. Didn't say it about Beefcake, Didn't say it about Kabuto. Throw in that Vaccine Man's power set was seemingly styled after DBZ characters, which is another pretty bold decision in the first place, since we all know how strong they are, and when you put all this together, you can definitely speculate that Vaccine Man would have been Monster Association cadre level, since he's essentially homeless emperor with disaster level dragon physiology, the ability to fly, gigantification, and all this before he's even transformed, which is said to give him an extreme power up. People like to use Saitama's punch effort against Vaccine Man to discredit his power ceiling, but if you're familiar with One Punch Man, you'd know Saitama's attacks are not always something you can judge conventionally. Send assistance tier for Vaccine Man, but this is mostly narrative speculation, so I left it for the end. Alas, there you go. Deku does amazingly well in season 1 of One Punch Man and leaves a very good account of himself. It gets very close for some of them, but I truly believe he can pull these victories out of the bag. Don't forget to check out the All Might version of this. There's a part 1 and a part 2. Then delve into the channel for more fun One Punch Man videos. Like, comment, sub, and I'll see you soon.